of people felt that was put out as a cover-up.
Without any video or photographic imagery to support the witnesses of the January 8th sighting, radar expert Glenn Schultz turns to the FAA. He files a Freedom of Information Act request for radar records of that night. His goal is to determine if anything out of the ordinary occurred in the night skies. Schultz breaks down the FAA radar data and constructs a 100-mile by 100-mile cube of airspace above Stephenville from ground level to 41,000 feet.
Inside of that cube, I looked at every antenna return that fell inside of there.
An antenna return appeared whenever the FAA radar antenna detected something in the sky. Analyzing those antenna returns, Schultz tracks the path of the 10 F-16 fighters that the military claims were in the area at the time of the sightings. Schultz's analysis confirms their story, to a point. But Schultz also finds something else in the sky with those F-16s. 3 unknown objects flying together over Stephenville.
They shared the characteristic of what I call erratic flight patterns. These targets would speed along at a fairly rapid speed, and then they would stop. For a 10 or 30-second period, we might have no forward motion of these unknowns, and then suddenly they would start moving again. And when they started moving, sometimes their speeds got up to several hundred miles per hour.
Schultz's scrutiny of the FAA records reveals that the speed, location, and movement of these 3 unknowns corroborates what Steve Allen saw that night. The antenna return data shows 2 crafts flying away from the county courthouse, and a 3rd craft being chased by 2 F-16s minutes later.
In my opinion, these 3 targets acting in such erratic speed profiles and where they were with regard to the Stephenville area and the time of night that they were present indicated to me that these unknown targets were responsible in part for what the eyewitnesses were seeing.
Schultz's radar findings suggest the F-16s were on military exercises. But the data shows that when the jets finished their training mission and turned back toward their base at Carswell Field, they abruptly split up.
6 of them followed the prescribed military training route centerline back to Carswell. 4 did not, and their returns stood out like gangbusters because they veered to the east by 25 to 30 miles off of the centerline of the military training route.
This change of course would place the F-16s directly in the area where Steve Allen saw them chasing the unidentified flying object.
The question arises as to why these 4 jets would veer off of course. One theory is that the pilots were just hot rodding. I don't think that was the case. I think they were more likely ordered from their ground commanding operations to do some inspection 20 to 30 miles east of Stephenville.
Schultz's findings received no official acknowledgement from the military. 2 months later, and 1,800 miles away, a nearly identical sighting mystifies eyewitnesses. Southwick, Massachusetts, April 18, 2008. Dan Vierno, a musician, is at home when his girlfriend spots something through the kitchen window.
A good 10, 15 minutes later, she's edging me to come out there. She's like, seriously, you gotta come out here and take a look at this.
Stepping out his front door, he watches a glowing orb float just above the horizon, radiating brilliant colors. Scanning the sky, he sees even more of the bright orbs. He grabs his camcorder and starts shooting the brightest light.
When I started filming it, it was actually near the end where it was just starting to go behind the horizon.
Dan's neighbor, Kathy Hubbard, also sees the lights.
The longer we watched it, the more frightened we became, the more concerned we became, and we knew that it was real. These did not move smooth across the sky, up, down, sideways, and they move very quick. And they did come near each other numerous times and then go away again. Trail of the stars.
A fourth witness, Courtney Lynn Wilson Merrill, observes the same lights.
There were 3 lights, but they were spread apart. There was one here, and then there was one right behind me, and then one in that direction. The lights in the sky didn't make any sort of noise. There weren't any military jets chasing it or anything.
Courtney is a professional photographer, and she focuses her video camera on the brightest object.
Were they in triangle formation?
It started down here.
Were they making
went up
patterns?
Here. Yes, they were.
She sets her camera for a short time exposure to better capture the light's erratic path.
What I wanted to do is if it was moving, it would create a little light trail.
This image records the light's path for 15 seconds.
You see the object move slightly with the stars and then dip down, stop, and then move with the stars again. So you'd have the 2 trails and then the little stair step down. I first thought that it was a ship, that it was some sort of ship, whether aliens or extraterrestrials or military or whatever. It was definitely man-made. It wasn't anything natural.
Like the earlier Texas incidents, air traffic control radar data could help investigators form a clearer picture of what happened in the skies above Southwick. But a request for radar records at the time of the sightings turns up nothing. The FAA explains they have no records relevant to that event. The similarity of the images of the lights recorded in Texas and later in Massachusetts draws the attention of retired fighter pilot and aviation investigator David Kennedy. Could the 2 sightings in very distant cities be of the same thing?
This is a very similar light pattern to what we saw in Stephenville, Texas. It appears to pulse just like the Stephenville illumination did.
Kennedy then looks for any indication that the light is something conventional, routine, explainable.
It doesn't look like an aircraft landing light or any kind of aircraft position lights. With a limited look at color on this, it does not appear to have the intensity of a target illumination flare, which is a white-hot magnesium. It doesn't have the short duration of a decoy flare. I've never seen anything like this, and frankly, I've talked to some of my friends and said, do you know anything that we're working on that this might be? And they draw a blank as well.
Kennedy's analysis suggests the light spotted over Texas and the one seen in Massachusetts could be the same object. Then reports of a third incredible sighting surface. 2 days earlier, April 16th, 2008, 800 miles west of Southwick in Kokomo, Indiana. Bright lights in the night sky, moving erratically. But this time, hundreds of people dial 911 after hearing a frightening sound.
Are you videotaping this?
I'm trying.
Please videotape this!
April 16th, 2008. Residents of Kokomo, Indiana marvel at strange formations of lights in the night sky. They're then suddenly rattled by a ground-shaking boom that's heard all across town. That night, Sergeant Richard Ferguson, a Howard County sheriff, is on duty near Kokomo.
April 16th was not, it started out as a very normal, quiet day and turned into absolute chaos in a matter of minutes.
It came right to our window. It's coming over the house right now, guys. It's coming this way.
It was an absolute crazy night.
911. What's going on? I heard an explosion. Yeah. We've got officers trying to find it. Okay. Thank you.
The Howard County 911 Emergency Call Center lights up with hundreds of calls.
As I'm heading back toward town, we started getting more and more reports of this bright light in the sky and 4 other different colored lights around it.
Kokomo residents armed with video cameras capture the mysterious images.
You see it? Oh my God!
Bolger is a retired Howard County detective and an Air Force veteran. He's at home when he hears the boom and rushes outside. Bolger watches as 5 orange lights form a straight line, each light shifting to the left as a new one appears.
These were just aligned in a row, and I couldn't see anything else around it. It didn't go up, it didn't go down, it was gone, just in a flash.
Sergeant Ferguson, getting reports from the 911 dispatchers, assumes the callers have seen a mid-air collision and explosion. He contacts the Indiana Air National Guard at Fort Wayne Airport and asks if any of their aircraft are flying in the area.
I had to find out exactly what was going on. So when I talked to those folks up there, our tower's closed, our planes are down, we don't have anybody up.
Minutes after the boom, Dustin Cronkite sees something that contradicts what Sheriff Ferguson has just been told.
I discovered that there were probably 14 to 16 airplanes, possibly jets, flying around in the same circular direction, which then got me to notice that there was a strange pattern of lights that were lighting up in the sky.
Dustin reports seeing a bright, strobing light shooting off intense colors. He photographs it.
I noticed that a lot of the lights in the sky were banding off on my camera, and they're kind of doing like a rainbow pattern. It was just kind of all over my camera with all the red, the blues, the greens, and the purples, just all different kind of lights that you don't really see ordinarily at night in the sky.
In one of his photos, Dustin captures lights in the shape of what he sees as a disc-shaped craft.
It was almost as if it was like a circular structure that was stationary in the sky that I'd photographed.
Seconds later, the craft disappears. The lights vanish, and the sky is quiet again. But what remains is a puzzling record of photos, video images, and plenty of witnesses who heard a thunderously loud boom.
Yeah, we just heard a big explosion that shook our house.
Right, we're already aware of it.
What could have generated a boom loud enough to shake roofs and rattle windows across several square miles? Sergeant Ferguson searched and found no evidence of a crash site, an impact crater, or an explosion. Perhaps the boom was caused by an aircraft flying supersonically and breaking the sound barrier. The next day, the 122nd Fighter Wing of the Indiana Air National Guard issued a statement. It explained that one of their F-16 fighter jets accidentally broke the sound barrier over Kokomo while deploying anti-missile flares. This raised suspicions for Sergeant Ferguson. He recalled that immediately after the boom, he spoke with the 122nd Fighter Wing and was told all of their planes were on the ground. A follow-up request for further clarification from the Fighter Wing was denied by the Pentagon.
Getting around the aircraft in this area, I am not buying into the aircraft story. It just doesn't add up.
Are they just trying to hide something? There wasn't a jet engine going by. There wasn't anything that was just rumbling. You couldn't tell what the boom was. That's what made it so peculiar.
These did not appear to be any flares that I've ever witnessed or seen before.
But days after the fighter wing's reversal, new video surfaces. Imagery that may support the Air Force's version of events. Amateur filmmaker J.T. Putterbaugh had reported seeing dozens of strange lights in the sky north of Kokomo.
When I saw that, I was basically like, you know, what's going on? That kind of freaked me out a little bit, but at the same time, I was intrigued by it.
He captures the lights, downloads the footage into his computer, and notices something unusual.
I noticed there's a little blinking light. I turned the exposure up and I could see that there was at least an object with a blinking light shooting these things out.
Retired Navy F-18 pilot David Kennedy analyzes JT's footage.
What you're going to see is a classic example of an F-16 dispensing decoy flares in a sequence. What you'll see is the picture get much brighter, and it's very, very obvious. You can see the flares actually coming out of the aircraft. This is a military training maneuver beyond a doubt.
Kennedy then compares JT's footage to video shot by other eyewitnesses that night.
This piece of video is very interesting. Taken by a mom with her handheld camera looking west from Kokomo, Indiana into the night sky. That tells me with a pretty good sense of certainty that this is an F-16 putting out expendables in a tactical training environment, in a tactical training profile.
Kennedy's analysis reveals the lights in these two videos were created by F-16s. But it doesn't explain several other videos, eyewitness accounts, and photos that captured a disc-shaped object in the skies over Kokomo. Did an F-16 generate the sonic boom? It's possible. But during training missions, F-16 pilots are expressly prohibited from flying supersonically over populated areas.
It's a very serious violation to do a sonic boom in an area where you're not supposed to. It's a violation of air discipline.
An aircraft flying supersonically above 761 miles per hour compresses the air around it so much it forms a shock wave. In addition to creating a loud boom, this shock wave can shake roofs, shatter windows, and damage structures. Coming up, a supersonic wind tunnel experiment leads one step closer to revealing what caused the boom over Kokomo. April 16, 2008. Witnesses see strange lights and hear a tremendous boom in the skies above Kokomo, Indiana.
It was pretty loud. It was like it rumbled everything, but there was nothing after that. There wasn't a jet engine going by. You couldn't tell what the boom was. That's what made it so peculiar.
It scared me. My house shook, my windows rattled, and it just really scared me.
Glenn Means is a retired Air Force Special Operations aviator.
We're standing at ground zero at Kokomo boom. We've determined by talking to witnesses and doing triangulation that this is probably where the boom originated, overhead.
Glenn estimates the boom was centered 5 miles southwest of Kokomo. This location is still several miles away from the Hilltop Military Operations Area, the only area where 122nd Fighter Wing F-16s are authorized to conduct training missions subsonically. Glenn and other investigators canvass the adjacent area. They speak with 33 residents living within a square mile of the boom's epicenter.
You just heard this huge boom, and you said you thought that a plane might have crashed?
Right.
Witness reports indicate the boom was several times louder than a normal F-16 sonic boom. An F-16 flying at Mach 1 would create a sonic boom around 140 decibels, about as loud as a gunshot at close range. But witness reports after the Kokomo boom describe a thunderous sound, so powerful it shakes roofs and almost breaks household windows. One witness claimed to have seen an F-16 in the sky at the time of the incident. But 9 of the witnesses claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky. Radar data obtained from the FAA shows several F-16s over Kokomo at the time of the boom. This data supports the military story. But the radar recordings also show an unidentified object flying in the airspace. This substantiates the eyewitness reports. Destin Cronkite claims he saw several F-16s circling the disc-shaped craft just before it flew off at a high rate of speed and disappeared. This raises one key question. Did an F-16 produce the boom reported by witnesses and military officials? Or could it have been the disc-shaped craft Dustin reported seeing? Dr. Scott Miller is professor and chairman of aerospace engineering at Wichita State University and a fellow at the National Institute for Aviation Research. He's designed an experiment to determine whether a disc-shaped craft can generate a sonic boom louder than an F-16. Dr. Miller and his team will test two scale models in a supersonic wind tunnel. An F-16 like the ones flown by the 122nd Fighter Wing, and a disc-shaped craft similar to what Dustin Cronkite photographed in the skies over Kokomo. Using Schlerin imagery, observers can see how air of different densities flows around an object. Dr. Miller and his team will be able to see the shock waves the F-16 and the disc generate as they travel through the air at over twice the speed of sound. They'll be looking closely at the size of each craft's shock wave. The craft that generates the bigger shock wave will produce the louder sonic boom.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Seen in this replay, the Schlerin imagery clearly captures the shock waves generated by the F-16 as it flies supersonically. Dr. Miller and his team review the results.
These are results obtained by testing this F-16 model. You see a shock wave formed on the nose of the aircraft.
Now the disc.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Actually, oh no, that's a good.
Dr. Miller analyzes the images.
This is a photograph of a recent run, and the flow is fully established at Mach, in this case, 2.2. The most prominent shock wave you see is the one that's coming off of the nose. You see another small one that's coming off the little spherical surface that sits on the top of the disc.
After reviewing the two shock wave profiles, Dr. Miller shares his findings.
In looking at the Schlerin photographs for these two models, this one's going to create a louder boom. And part of the reason for that is it's got more volume to it. And obviously when you look at the intensity of the shock waves in the Schlerin photos, the disc generated a greater intensity, higher strength nose shock and tail shock. So this one would sound very loud.
At supersonic speeds, the disc generated a larger shock wave than the F-16. The results suggest if an F-16 and a disc were flying in the same airspace, the disc would make a louder sonic boom than an F-16. Investigators have been unable to find any recording of the actual boom over Kokomo. Until one is found and analyzed, the wind tunnel results open the possibility that a disc-shaped object could have caused the extra loud boom heard over Kokomo. It does not rule out that an F-16 caused the boom. However, numerous credible witnesses reported seeing something very different from an F-16, and many of their photos and videos show an object unlike any known military aircraft. Coming up, an aviation photography analyst attempts to replicate eyewitness photos and videos. Early in 2008, strange flying lights and unknown craft mystified scores of witnesses in Texas, Massachusetts, and Indiana. A few managed to grab their cameras and photograph the fleeting objects.
I noticed all the pictures had like just a band of lights that was just stretching all the way across the screen on my camera.
I sort of came to my senses and said, oh, I have my camera with me, and that's when I started shooting.
Could recording something routine like military or commercial aircraft have created these unusual images? To answer that riddle, Craig Schmidtman, a professional aviation photographer, has devised a test. Craig has gathered the same type of cameras used by the witnesses. And from a vantage point at Los Angeles International Airport, he will be photographing approaching and departing aircraft. He will use a number of settings on each camera to see if he can replicate the mysterious string lights and other phenomena seen in the eyewitness videos.
So the camera I've been shooting with so far tonight is a mid-level professional digital SLR from one of the major brands. It's about 8 megapixel resolution, and from what we understand, it's almost identical in performance to the cameras used in Texas and Massachusetts.
A critical factor